In recent weeks, there has been renewed talk about the economy reaccelerating, not decelerating, reaccelerating, and the no landing scenario. Not just soft landing, because economic data has been generally good and above expectations. We've seen this last week. What do you make of this no landing scenario and possible reacceleration?
You know, a year ago, a little more, there's a debate in the markets of like a hard landing, soft landing. These are somewhat nebulous terms and they're not necessarily well defined, but I think everyone knew that hard landing means recession, soft landing basically means no recession. I think that's a pretty straightforward thing. Now that the expectations are for like a recession is very low, it's this soft landing, no landing. It's even sort of more undefined what that means. And I think if we surveyed people in the room, say like, how do you define a soft landing? How do you define a no landing? We'd probably get about 50 different responses. So I like to actually try to quantify, like in some sense, like what it means. And a week ago, I wrote a note and I titled it the 5% landing. And by 5%, this is, if you look at the nominal growth in the economy this year, the first half, it's about 5% nominal GDP. First half is about 2.5% real GDP growth and about 2.5% inflation. The inflation data we have for Q3 would put inflation around 2.5% annualized over the quarter. So rough approximation is that third quarter GDP nominally grew 5.5%. For perspective, the last 3 years, it was over 10%, 9%, and 6% last year. So when I think of a landing, I'm thinking, well, the economy is kind of landing to this level. I think the soft landing perspective is what we were pre-pandemic, where it was basically 4%. You know, you had 2% growth, you had 2% inflation, you had very low rates. I think historically that's the anomaly. I think we'll have something that's higher just because of inflation. So that I just try to kind of quantify what we mean. So I think we've kind of landed in this range, give or take, for the time being.